Hi, friends and family,
Welcome to Hope After Addiction
with your host, Katie Comer.
and Chelsea McLeod.
Hi, welcome to Hope After Addiction. We are so happy that you have joined us today. How are you?
I'm doing well, friend. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. We're kind of in the thick of sports and kids and busyness and all the things. So it is, it's a crazy season, but it's a good season. So, but yeah. Anything new with you?
No, just crazy chaos, but I have to
Yeah.
remind myself it's a beautiful chaos. So
Yeah.
even in messes and deaths and stuff like that, I'm like, it's just, it's life.
It
you
is,
know?
yeah. It is chaos.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we are super happy that you have, like I said, joined us today. We are going to be talking about something. This is something actually our producer mentioned to us that we've never really talked about.
Yeah.
But it's what is hope after addiction? That is the name of our podcast. That's what we really strive is to offer hope in this season of whatever you're going through. Chelsea and I have talked a lot about how people who listen to our podcast, it might not be addiction, but people inevitably are going through something. So what is hope, essentially, after whatever trial you're dealing with? But what is hope after addiction? So we're going to kind of really dive in deep about why we've kind of named our podcast that, what we're trying to convey, what is hope in this season. And so, that's kind of, we've never really talked about it. But, I mean, obviously, in the title, right? That is what we're trying to achieve. That's what we want God to give you hope. God using us to give you hope through what we've gone through. But we're going to dive in a little deeper about what that hope means.
Yeah. Which is fun. And I think it was Melissa. I don't remember what episode she did, but she said it. She said it's hope after ...
Yes.
And so what is your hope
You
after?
might see some merch coming.
Yeah. I'll say we have some ideas rolling.
We'll see.
Yes. But as the podcast has progressed over, a year and a half,
Yeah.
we have a lot of listeners that aren't necessarily going through addiction with a loved one or addiction, and just so many storms that people are walking through and our listeners. And so that's kind of where like the epiphany and the mindset started rolling, is hope after whatever you're going through.
Yeah.
And so we talk about our stories, whatever
Sure.
that is. And, I know I talk a lot about infertility, but of course addiction.
Yeah.
But any of the stuff we talk about can relate to any of life's storms.
Yeah.
And so the title is Hope After Addiction, which we really prayed about, and God gave that to us. But as it's progressed, it's hope after, like, whatever you're going through.
Yeah. So, as we dig in a little bit, what hope offers when you're dealing with some sort of battle, some sort of whatever, but specifically addiction for what we've dealt with in our lives. What is hope? It offers a personal transformation to who we used to be, right? So when I think back on my life as a whole, and what it was like before the addiction with my husband, I feel like I'm a completely different person.
Completely.
Right? So whatever you're dealing with, and God's brought you out of that, and you're telling your story, right? And you're giving other people hope. I can completely say, call it naive, call it whatever you want to, but God has given a personal growth emotionally. I'm a completely different person. Spiritually, I'm a completely different person. I have grown so much in who God's called me to be, essentially. And I think that that's the hope for everybody, right? As you deal with stuff in your life, as you deal with the death in your life, as you deal with sickness in your life, as you deal with depression, addiction, whatever, and God's called you through that storm, you can confidently say, as you get on the other side of it or you're going through it, that God is transforming you into a different human.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Would you say that you're a completely different person
100%.
in each individual part of your life? You've gone through several
Yeah.
things in your life.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It makes you stronger. And that's like, as you're talking, all I could think was it catapulted sanctification. And the thing that I
that's
came to
good,
mind
yeah.
is because you don't have a choice, but actually you do have a choice.
Yeah.
You can choose to catapult in sanctification and run to Jesus and grow in Jesus, or like we've talked about before, you can sit and wallow in it. And so, the hope and God's plan for these storms is to catapult you into a closer relationship with Him.
Yeah, that's the
That's
goal.
the
That's
ultimate
hope.
goal.
Yeah.
And it does grow you tremendously. Like, I know today I am a completely different human than who I was 7 years ago
Yeah.
because of the nights, the endless nights, the tears, but I learned to run to Jesus, and I learned who my hope was in, who my trust was in, who my faith was in. Like, I learned that He was the only one. And I even think studying for this, it's like before that, I just felt like a boat tossed around the sea. I felt like a house that was on such a sandy foundation. Where anything could waver me, anything could change me, anything could change my feelings, my happiness, and I think that's where it's come in the spiritual transformation, is knowing joy despite the storms.
Yeah. That's
and it
good.
has changed to an unwavering place. Do I still have emotions and
Sure.
days? And absolutely. But I know that we have endured tumultuous situations, and that God will bring me through.
I
So it
agree.
has transformed in a mighty, mighty way. But I couldn't see that in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think before I often try to think back to my life, before, when I was early in marriage, or even before marriage, dating and stuff. And, part of my testimony is, I feel like nothing ever went wrong in my life. When I really look back on it, I had a few breakups,
Right.
but nothing serious happened. So it was a very complacent life. I always often say naive, if you will. But I was content just to have the white picket fence and nothing happened. But because of the storm, because of the addiction, this has offered me the hope that God will get me through anything. And He's really shown me that nothing is surprising to Him. And I'm grateful that I'm able to use that with other people and what they're going through, whatever it may be. I was talking to somebody who broke up with somebody recently, and I was able to look at them and say, do you really think that this is surprising to your Heavenly Father?
That's
He
the
has
question.
something so much better. And because of what I've been through, I was able to offer them some hope, saying, yeah, I know it was great, and I know it was so good, but God has something so much better, even though you're going through the storm.
It's so good.
Yeah, right.
And you've heard me say before, and you'll have to study deeper in this, but God is not a God of comfort. And when I heard that one time, I was like, what? Yes, He is. It says it in the Bible.
He's comforter.
Yeah. But realistically, God doesn't want us to stay comfortable. God
Yeah.
doesn't want us to stay complacent, like
Yeah.
Katie was saying. God wants us to step out of that. The enemy wants to keep you comfortable. The enemy wants to keep you complacent because you're in that lukewarm place of I'm just going through the motions.
Yeah.
But God wants to take you deeper. And it's even like a kid. If you kept a kid in kindergarten for the rest of their life,
Yeah.
they would never grow.
Right.
They would never move
gotta
past what we were
challenge 'em.
teaching them. Yes. And so those are the seasons, and the transformation is just, I wouldn't have said it 8 years ago, but it's so special.
Yeah.
It's so special. So,
Yeah. We often say we wouldn't trade it.
nope.
It was hard. And some things are still hard. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got different things. I'm a parent now, and, sicknesses and deaths, and there's still things that are very difficult. But because of what we've been through, we know God's got it. We know God's got it. And that's what I often pray, when I am going through something. Lord, you've got this. You have us in your hand. You've ordained this, and I trust you're going to bring us out of this.
Yeah.
And stronger, because I know He's made me stronger in the past.
Yeah.
So,
It's so good.
something else that, as you're looking at hope, through whatever you're going through, hope after addiction, is a renewed relationship with whatever you're going through or whoever you're going through it with. So for me specifically, I had to relearn who Adam was.
Yes.
It was a renewed relationship. He was not the same person I married. And that's what initially, when I was like, something's wrong with you, back along, when he was first going through the addiction, I was like, this is not who I married. But that was because of the active addiction.
Yeah.
But now I can say, that's not who I married, but it's for a good reason. You know what I mean? Because God's grown him into a new person, and it's renewed my relationship with him. And so this has also brought that out as a good hope for you as you're listening and going, I'm going through this. And my daughter, she's just addicted to this, and my wife or my husband. What we can offer you in hope after this is a renewed relationship, somebody brand new that you've never known. But it's beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Right?
I think about that, and I say it a lot of times, but I could have never dreamt of the husband that I have today.
Yeah.
And who he is.
Yeah.
And, and it is hopeless in these situations because you're like, I'm never going to have that marriage. I'm never going to have my daughter back or my son back or my wife back, and walking through this, it has been a renewed relationship. And it puts a whole new fire inside of you. And I was thinking, we were marriage class Sunday night, and everybody in the room but two were divorcees, including us. And I just thought about the fire inside of us to make our marriage work. But if we had not been through the brokenness, we wouldn't have that fire to fight for our marriage, which is what the enemy wants to take so badly.
Yeah.
And so it is neat. It is neat to watch John pursue relationships in a whole different way. And sometimes that means severing relationships that were unhealthy, but to fight for the ones that are good and that are life-giving. And I texted a family member this week that we lost, or the wife, and just told her, I was like, they say it takes a village to raise a child. I was like, but I believe it takes a village to do life with. And I was like, without you guys, John wouldn't be alive today. John wouldn't be part of the man that he is. And it's neat to watch relationships just flourish after going through the storms.
It's true.
Because even I think about John's family, the whole family is saved and loves the Lord. And I'm like, God, without addiction, we wouldn't have this. I love being with them.
Yeah.
And so stay with the hope that there can be renewed relationships.
Yeah, we do hear that a lot, though, from guys that will be transformed. If you don't know and you're listening, our the rehab that we're associated with is S2L Recovery, and it's an all-male facility. And we often hear these men who become transformed every day. It's just so mind-blowing what God's doing in this ministry. But every day these guys are being transformed. And in turn, their families, like you just said, their families are being transformed. They're becoming leaders in their families. And then in turn, their children are saying, I want to be like whatever my daddy has. I want that as well.
So true.
So it's just catapulted them into this generational transformation and generational renewed relationships.
Yes. And it's generational.
Yeah.
And we have a couple friends that are walking this that have lost the sons and the, children. But it is so cool to watch how they are using their stories and pouring into other men and literally passing on their love to other men because the other ones aren't here. And it's just, and I'm telling them, I'm just amazed by you because I know that you miss them so much, but you are using that love to still continue to create a generational purpose in all of this.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And to keep their legacy going.
That's so good.
And so it's just so cool how God renews it all.
Yep. Yeah. The next thing that you can look forward to, something that we can tell you find hope in is the freedom that getting out of the storm provides. The freedom, the no shame. Because something as I was walking through it, I never thought that I would not. I always thought I would be kind of shameful. Like it would be a shameful thing that I'm walking through. but something to offer you some hope as you're going to get on the other side of it, because you will. And we speak that into your life, right? Is that you will get on the other side and be so proud of what God's done and the freedom that he has given you. As a loved one of somebody that's walking with somebody that's going through addiction, or you yourself, like you might be listening to this and said, hey, God's brought me out of this addiction. And that is so great. And God's going to use this to say, hey, I'm not shameful. I'm not shamed by what God's done in my life. I'm going to yell freedom, and that's something that can offer you some hope, as you're dealing with this. Because I thought forever, I was like, oh my gosh, it's just going to be like a cloud over our relationship. We're always going to have to explain it. And look at me, I'm doing a podcast every week about my husband's past addiction. So, but I am not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of it. And I'm not, I think I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of our story. I'm so proud that he's found the freedom and our marriage has found the freedom that it has. So hopefully that will give you some hope in your story as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a big one, and for both sides of our parties. And the enemy absolutely does not want freedom. He wants you to feel shame for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of questions from my women and we went through the same thing in the beginning. It was a very hidden. And I think you talked about this too, very hidden. And we would say that John was off on a boat because that was typical for him. And it was not long at all that John's like, I don't care who you tell. I don't care what you tell. Like, this is my story and I'm ready to shout it from the rooftops.
That's awesome.
And it's fun because now we're in that place, like, we don't do surface level anymore. And we laugh about that because we actually met this couple who we grew super close with. We got a date night, which is rare for us. And this couple starts talking to us, and John is very bold and like does not hide emotions. And so they start talking to us, and John's just looking like, really, like, we got one date night, Well, we ended up jumping deep within like 2 minutes of it. And they're like really good friends now. But we literally can be in a random restaurant. Yeah. And like, you want to share your story. And it's always divine. Like, it's
there's
always
something so freeing about that.
Yes.
For sure.
And like, there's no shame. And it's such a good feeling. Like, it's such. And so one day, if you're not there yet, you will get there where you're like this, no matter the ending, no matter what's happened, that this is my story and God wants me to use it.
I love that.
Just so much fun.
There's freedom.
There's freedom.
Yes. And then, and this kind of goes along with what we just said, is the freedom to share your story. And this is something I never thought I would be doing ever.
Amen.
And there's so much hope that your story can provide to other people. And I encourage you, in whatever season you're walking in, to share your story. One, I feel it's very therapeutic to share your story, especially at the beginning, because it's opening up. And I feel like there was such a burden when I was like keeping it so secret.
Yes. Yep.
But there's something so beautiful in offering so much hope to people. And we hear tons of people coming to us, blessing us with words of encouragement, saying, you've offered me so much hope during the season because my story is exactly like yours. And so you can be that for somebody too. Open your heart up, allow yourself to be able to share your story, because you can offer somebody hope in whatever they're going through.
And it's huge. And it says, talk about being a beacon of hope for those who may still be struggling. And I still think back all these years later to a random person who was a beacon of light for me. And so that's our encouragement, is go be that beacon of light for somebody.
Love it.
And I'm going to tell you, when that prompting is on your spirit to tell your story, do not go against that, because there's no telling what blessing God also has in it for you. Because when you have that and you meet that, it is so powerful. And so be that beacon of light, no matter what your story is, because it's all unique. It's all different. And it's all divine and meant for somebody. And I always say, y'all hear me say, if it's for one person that I went through all of this, it was worth it.
I agree. So that is our message of hope for you in whatever you're going through. We're going to switch gears. We talked a little bit about this last week. We're going to do something a little fun.
I'm excited.
It's a little fun.
Yeah.
We have some listeners that have reached out to us and asked questions. And something that I feel guilty about is we have not responded to those in a way that we should have. And so this is our way of responding to those questions. And hopefully our listeners that have asked these questions are listening, and we are going to answer some of these. We're going to answer one, maybe two an episode. We will not use names. We don't even have the names. Carlos is going to be putting some of these questions up. We don't know what the questions are going to be, but he's going to put these questions up. And we're going to answer them in about 5 or 10 minutes to wrap up our episodes. So we're looking forward to being able to. So if you do have questions, make sure you're emailing them to hopeafteraddiction@gmail.com. And we will, or any of our social media platforms. We have Instagram and Facebook, Hope After Addiction. Email us questions that maybe you're like, I'm really struggling with this. Can you answer this? So we are going to answer 1 or 2 an episode to offer you some encouragement as well. So Carlos just put up our first question, and it is, so I'm wondering how to approach separating from my husband, who is a high-functioning alcoholic. High-functioning alcoholic means you can hide it. A lot of people don't see it, but you as a wife know it's there. A lot of times family members know that it's there, or sometimes not. But they're able to do their everyday life without really letting it affect them. So, do you want to answer first and then I'll follow up? Or?
We can go. And I think I can speak on behalf of both of us because we both had to separate.
Yes,
from
that's true.
Our loved
Very
ones.
true.
And so we do have experience with this. The biggest thing that popped in my mind when I read this is do everything in love. And so actually it was an Al-Anon thing that I learned, but lovingly detaching. And so I remember I actually did this twice with John. And when I remember telling him, I love you and I don't want to do this, but I don't have a choice. Like I will not sit here and watch you destroy yourself. And I won't live in this. And I'm doing this because I love you. And so whatever you do, make sure it's done in love, because they already know that it's not fair. They know that it's wrong. And so you will most likely get rebuttal from this, but do it in love, and they can never fault you for that.
And something that, as you were talking and as I was thinking about this question, is we talk about boundaries a lot in several of our podcasts. You can go back and listen to some of the boundary episodes. But this is one of the very first boundaries that you can set for your husband and say, hey, I need this to be able to, if we have any sort of hope, and it sounds like you have hope in your relationship because you're just talking about separating and not divorcing. So if there's any sort of hope in our situation, any sort of hope in our marriage, this is a boundary that I have to create for myself so that you can realize that you need the help that you need. Yeah. And a lot of times I talk a little bit about a contract of sorts when you're dealing with your loved one. And a contract meaning saying we're going to separate I didn't give Adam a time frame. I stopped talking to him and I separated from him. I didn't say it's going to be for 3 months. Yeah. No, I didn't. I just said, I don't know what this looks like, but if there's any sort of hope for us, I cannot communicate with you. You've got to figure this out on your own. And that's hard. Yeah. It's very hard for them to hear, but it's a boundary that you've got to create. And say, it's kind of like giving a ... saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but I've got to work on myself and really work on yourself during this time of separation.
Yeah. And we always want and strive for restoration and redemption.
Yes.
And so,
first and foremost,
like Katie said, tell them like, I want our marriage, but we have to figure this out. And so reiterate that to them, Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a good one for that. Okay. Second question, this will be our last question, but So our daughter's cocaine addiction is what's led me to y'all's podcast. And I was just wondering if S2L Recovery has any sister programs for just women. So we get this question so much. S2L Recovery is a men's only facility. But there are not sister programs, but there are women only programs out there that are very similar to S2L. They preach freedom. They preach the Bible, and that is, in our opinion, what works the best. When we're talking about freedom from addiction, is really diving in deep and cleaning the inside of their cup, and eventually the outside of the cup and the addiction will follow suit. And so they're completely transformed from the inside out. And so that's what we believe at S2L. And there are programs out there similar. So what we're going to do, if you're watching this on YouTube, our producer is going to put a link to some sister programs that you can click on that and it'll pop up. We have several that we send out to people all the time.
And that'll be for computer only, right?
Yeah, that'll be for computer only. There might be like a link at the bottom as well that you can click on.
Yeah. If you are listening through a cell phone or audio podcast, click the link in the description and we will send it through there.
And then other ways that you can access these is if you want to private message us on any sort of platform. So you can find us on Instagram, Facebook. There's the direct message link. You can send us, hey, I'm looking for those programs, and we'll send you those as well. And is that it?
I think so.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you enjoyed this new little thing that we're doing. We are so happy that you have joined us today, and we hope that you have a great day. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.